All right, welcome back. Nandini, you are hosting the session. Take it
Awesome.
away.
Thank you, Nick, and welcome back. We now have a new session focusing on jump-starting with new techniques and approaches. I'm Nandhini from Purdue University, and today we have three amazing presentations in this session. So we have Kaia Olsen from University of Iowa. We have Cheryl Briggs from University of Central Florida. And then we have a team collaboration between Mayet and Caleb from Texas A&M and Nick Jushchyshyn from Drexel University. So we have a very good range of topics ranging from experimental filmmaking using Gaussian-Splatting, and then we have techniques about using real-time live performance with virtual environments. And finally, we are going to talk about a topic that's very important, which is procrastination and iteration. So I'm really looking forward to these sessions. So our first presenter is Kaia Olsen. So please take away.
Hi, this is Kaia Olsen. I've been working with the University of Iowa. I just recently joined the school and have been building a computer graphics program there. The school is traditionally a live action focused school, so I wanted to find ways to be able to use their experimental film heritage as a gateway for us to teach a language of CG and visual effects. These are activities that we employed in partnership with the Stanley Museum there at the University of Iowa. Using Gaussian-Splatting, it allowed us to be able to employ traditional computer animation techniques in a very easy to access technology. It had a very low learning curve. Students can access this via their phone and then take this and translate this into 3D data that we could understand spatiality and coordinate systems, and then easily deploy them in common tools like After Effects for tweaking and final renders.
Thank you, Kaya. And we really look forward to the discussions towards the end to talk more about your project, the pipeline, and the museum collaboration. So next we have Cheryl Briggs from University of Central Florida. And Cheryl will be presenting about this speed running assignments being a solution for procrastination and iteration.
So this is my presentation about a solution that I've come up with. It started really because I have a 19-year-old who procrastinates all the time, and actually everyone procrastinates a lot, I've found along the way. So try to contextualize it for him, and in turn it really opened the doors to help my students as well. So we all struggle with procrastination, and I've been gathering reasons why for a while now, and they pretty much break into 5 categories, and I'm not going to read them all because I know that you all can read, and I know that you probably have or can identify with some of these, but they basically come in with avoidance for different reasons, and self-doubt, imposter syndrome, is a popular one, reasons why, and then lack of iteration and growth, because people feel like it's a one and done kind of assignment all the time. And it's hard to get to the students to understand that you really want in the concept of first draft, second draft kind of ideas. Even if you're not writing, it's the same when you're relating that to the students when it comes to visual and creative projects. And then, of course, we all have workflow and time management issues because for some reason, our lives are very complicated these days, and we are all overextended and have too many things going on. And our students really struggle with that. And then also the creative and technical challenges that come along with learning new software and learning new techniques and trying to figure out how to do all of these things, as well as burnout, So what is speed running as an assignment? Well, I want to quickly talk about what speed running is in general. It's a gameplay behavior. If anyone's played video games, we all play games differently. And some people like to do what's called speed running, which is trying to get through the map or the level or the whole game even as quickly as possible. Trying to use like optimization strategies and maximized efficiency as they go through the level. So I took that concept and I applied it to work. And, we all have seen this little meme out on the web. I did steal it from someone who created it and recreated it without curse words for this presentation. But, I thought about this and I was like, what we really need to do is flip the narrative, change it so that what we're doing is approaching speed running any assignment, any task that we're given, and getting it done as fast as possible the minute we get it. And what that does is that gives us the time to iterate. It gives us the time to not overthink things, to attack it once we receive it, get it done, put it out off to the side for a while, let it kind of percolate and simmer, and then revisit it maybe in a next class or another week. And I've learned with my students, by shifting the pressure to the front of the timeline, they can attack this in a couple of ways. Even if they don't want to touch it again, they've at least got it done. And so, that helps them grow with their confidence. And we're going to talk about the other things. So how do we do this? Well, in larger projects, as well as single assignments, you want to make sure that you have an achievable goal. You want to make sure that you're giving a strict time limit. So 1 hour class time is great for this. Some of our labs or classes are much longer. So if you set aside a block of an hour just to get them to get through it, 1 hour, then you have more time to go back and revisit even in the same class period if it's longer. And analyzing the results. So we usually throw the screen captures up on the window, like on the projector, so that everybody can see it, or even I just have them open it up on their computer monitors and let everybody get up and walk around the classroom and just kind of take a look at what everybody's done. And then we can sit back down and try it again, or wait till the next class and do it again, or even just tackle another similar assignment if they're learning a tool this way. And so this is the example that I'm going to be talking about today. So why does it work? Well, it definitely reduces the overwhelm of starting, overthinking things, trying to figure out where to begin. It also encourages resilience through iteration. They know that this is a throwaway. There's not too much weight on it. They'll get 25 points. I usually give a point value to it so that they actually do it. But at least they know it's not going to like destroy their grade if it's terrible. So it puts away the fear that they have. And it also starts fostering this instinctiveness that they have within themselves, and like taking creativity to another level and just being able to trust themselves. That's what I tell them all, like, trust the process, but trust yourself that even if you don't know all the tools, you have that ability within you to get something created in the next hour. And then, so I've been thinking about different examples. I jotted a whole bunch of different ideas down, and I highlighted the ones that I've actually done with my classes. But these have definitely opened doors for my students, and I wanted to try to make sure that everybody had something that they could possibly relate to today. But the one I'm going to talk about is number 11, the gray box speed level, where we block out a functional level layout within an hour using Unreal. So I found the list of locations, and the website is, I think it's World of Level Design, and I put it into just a PDF or in a Word document, and I numbered them all, and I use a random number generator, and we just pick a number. We go to that one on the list, and then they have an hour to create this space. And then, going forward, this is 5 examples of the different skill levels from the class that we did this past fall. They're new to Unreal. Most of them haven't used Unreal before, so they're just kind of learning with primitives, but that's the whole point, to start understanding on this assignment, understanding how to use some of the tools. And obviously we had one student that obviously had used Unreal before, because his environment's a little bit more completed. So what this does for my students is that it helps transform their procrastination into actual progress, and they can see that they're not as bad necessarily as they think they are, or they can see that they're struggling and they need extra help and they need to spend more time on these assignments. It helps them understand the iteration process and foster resilience and adaptability. And it really helps me identify which students are struggling in the beginning so that I can maybe set up some one-on-one time in my office hours with them later to see if I can help them or provide some additional tutorials that might help them get launched faster. And it helps shift their mindset, you know, from I have to be perfect to let me get something done as soon as possible, and then I can refine it. Um, it empowers them to tackle creative challenges, I think, with more confidence. And it definitely reduces the number of incomplete or missing submissions because they're more likely to actually start something and iterate. And that's my last slide, and I hope I made it in 5 minutes. So thank you very much.
Mhm. Thank you, Cheryl. I would love to hear more about how you implement this and also the students' feedback. So now we'll move on to our next presentation. We have Mayet and Caleb from Texas A&M and Nick from Drexel.
Hi, everybody. These are images from our summer industry course project. I'm Mayet Andreassen, and my co-teacher in the summer industry class, which we are going to showcase or talk about today, is Caleb Kicklighter. We are both instructional assistant professors. And the class I'm going to talk about is called Summer Industry Course, which is a graduate level course that Texas A&M Visualization Master's Program runs every summer. Last summer, we partnered with Stray Vista Studios, which is a ICVFX studio. So ICVFX stands for in-camera visual effects, and they use an LED wall to project real-time images on it for virtual production. We had a lot of help. We had a great grad assistant teacher, Aditya Sathi-Anarayanan. I know he's going to be mad at me for butchering his last name. And Jace George was our peer teacher, and Jace came with a lot of actual practical film experience, and Aditya came with a lot of Unreal and real-time experience. And then our partner studio was Stray Vista Studios. So it's a small studio in Dripping Springs, Texas. Aaron Mauer's the studio director, the studio owner and CEO is Nate Strayer. And then we had the head of the Virtual Production Institute, David Parrish, helped us with making sure we have resources. Wayne Miller, who's a special advisor to the dean, has a lot of experience in film, and he got us partnerships with both Sisu Robotics and Sony. Sony provided scholarships for our students, competitive scholarships for our students, as well as cameras and lenses. And Sisu Robotics provided a robotic arm. So ICVFX is a blending of traditional filmmaking and visual effects, and it's all on a real-time set. And here you can see some images from the sets from Stray Vista, and those are students and some of the actors. It really gives full creative control and allows for a more thought-out compositions. It could be more convenient, especially if there's locations that would otherwise be really hard to shoot at. And it can save both time and money. So LED panels are used, which unlike green screen, they really allow for the background environment to be visible for everyone on set, which helps with the actors. It also helps with green spill. So that's the green light that will oftentimes spill on reflective objects. You don't have to worry about that with the LED wall and ICVFX. So what you see is what you get. And then it employs camera tracking and parallax. So that's linking the physical camera with the virtual camera, which is located in Unreal Engine. So that's just a clip of the on-set with the Sisu Robotics arm and shooting with the actor on the wall, and then the actual footage that was shot. All right, so ICVFX can solve a lot of problems. I went a little bit into it, and it can make real life locations come to life in a virtual world. So you could do custom interiors with ICVFX, really difficult to access locations that would otherwise be very expensive to go to. Expansive locations, exteriors with movement could be achieved, offset extensions, and it's used a lot in commercials with driving sequences. And now I'm going to hand it over to Caleb Kicklighter to continue.
Perfect. Okay, next slide, please. So I'll be talking a little bit about the project scope and what happened in the class. So our summer industry course is a course where students over the course of this summer for 10 weeks work with industry professionals on group projects and get feedback and guidance on professional industry workflows, depending on what they're going into, whether it's games, animation, and this last summer was virtual production. So this class was meant to teach students the basics and advanced filmmaking techniques for virtual production, specifically using an LED volume. And so they got a lot of the most up-to-date approaches using pre-production and production for the entire process. So the course was mostly around lectures, both in video and remote and in person, as well as hands-on experience at the studio in Dripping Springs, Texas. And the professional mentors provided virtual production guidelines for each project, where students would get an understanding of the realistic examples that we would use for virtual production, as well as the standard workflows and process for developing a story or film in the pre-production stage. And at the end of the course, the idea was the students would have a finished deliverable in the form of a video short film with a good understanding of the full process of the virtual production pipeline. So I'll go through these pretty quickly. We don't need to read all of this, but with this course, it's always important for us to work with the mentors to set a set of parameters so that the students are keeping it within scope, but still pushing and challenging themselves to learn the appropriate skills. So they had to make a live action video with ICVFX, which Mayet described earlier. Projects had a very simple core emotional theme for the story building. The time limit was a hard 2 minutes, so students couldn't have a longer than 2 minutes film. Their environment, Unreal Engine environments had to be pretty minimal so that we can build it within the short time period. They had to have 2 speaking characters because that really opens up the challenge of how they interact with live actors in front of the screen and the type of shots they work with. And then they had other essentially shooting requirements so that we could test out the different advantages of why they would want to shoot in front of a virtual production screen, because it's not always going to be the answer to how you shoot. And then we also have in there robotic arm maneuvers, because we thankfully had Sisu Robotics, cinematic robotics. So they had a robot arm that was moving a camera. So students got to try a lot of unique camera moves using that. And then something that was really important for how teams were structured and how the students worked was they all had key film roles like director of photography or cinematographer, virtual production, operator. And so those students all got to put on those hats and kind of take on that role in production and work together. So all the students had to create a version of their final environment. So a big part of this was we want all the students to come away with like a technical understanding of working in Engine, and not every one of those roles, like director might not necessarily be in Unreal Engine very often. So all the students did have requirements in the class that did get them involved in the world building within the technical software. Students also had to consider the number of shots in their films to stay within scope. They had to think about the environments they were building, the worlds they were building, because they had to source or make the props in real life, and they also had to find and access the costumes. And then also they had to think about the actors, who was going to be involved, who they had access to, because one of the projects they had an older gentleman, so they couldn't ask students or like find them within the school very easily. They'd have to like look through different sources and mediums and media. So they had a lot of different resources and techniques that they were advised on in terms of going through the casting process and putting out a call. This is just a still showing one of the actresses that was in the film, and she was a professional actress that the students essentially did a casting call with and had her read lines. and then she came and participated with them. Students would have essentially this is a kind of a holdover from how we have done it every summer, but it's industry standard of reviewing their work usually daily, but in this case, because of the mentors not being full-time employees, students would show their feedback to the industry mentors twice a week, and then get feedback and direction on their story, the technical workflow, the art direction, and everything that all the mentors had expertise on. Here's some set building behind the scenes showing kind of this construction of the set with the actors in front of the ICVFX wall. You can see, hopefully it's a surprise to you, but I always think it's a surprise that everything behind the bed and that cardboard castle is all an LED screen. So that's just showing kind of like the juxtaposition of the real life set in front of it. And then on the right-hand side, we have one of the actors sleeping in bed, and that's actually Mayet's son sleeping there. He volunteered to be our actor. Here's just a shot showing one of the key mentors, Ace Patel from Stray Vista, kind of showing students camera settings and how to operate it.
All right, so we do have project examples. I don't know if we have time to show them. I'm going to switch over to Nick, and if we have time at the very end.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'll just say that the work that Mayet and Caleb are doing at Texas A&M is incredibly inspiring, and I just feel like sometimes when I see what they're doing, I almost feel like a deer in headlights, and I just want to, well, one day, someday, I end up procrastinating. And so in the spirit of Cheryl's presentation, I just wanted to share that you know, at my university, we've ordered our LED wall. It hasn't arrived yet, but we've been teaching virtual production in camera visual effects for a few years now, and we're not waiting. We're not procrastinating. We're just getting started with it. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about that, so that others, I really feel like this is a fantastic tool, both for teaching and for students to learn a lot of important skills. And so sometimes it doesn't even involve the in-camera portion of things. So as it happened, I was teaching a motion capture class, and a group of students were working. It was in an Unreal Engine scene that we had access to through, it's every once in a while there's some assets that are available at no cost. And this Western town is one that is readily available. And it showed up in a music video while the class was going on. This is an artist, I can't remember her name right now. Somebody knows who this is, right? Lindsay Sterling. Thank you so much. Yes, I knew. And in her music video, she used exactly the same scene. And it was so exciting for the students to see, like, oh my gosh, this professional video, like, we're working with that right now. And so that was this was a motion capture class, but they were using the same set as was being used on an LED wall for professional production. We've also used rear projection. You can use front projection as well. So in this setting, instead of having an LED wall, we have two laser projectors on a rear projection surface. And this particular rear projection surface was donated to the university back in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. So this is actually, at this point, like 25 years old, the rear projection surface itself. And I think I pulled it out of a recycling bin because someone else was all done with it. But we're able to use that for in-camera visual effects. So this is an in-camera visual effects setting. The camera is being tracked by our Vicon system that's in the same studio, and you kind of see how that shot finishes out. And then the last thing, of course, is that there is still green screen, and in a lot of these cases, we're using it for a live streaming broadcast. And so this is an example from it's a virtual production for live events, live broadcast and live events. And so in this case, it was a live stream done by students, and the room next to the studio was our control room. We had students volunteering and being the talent that was on screen. This is how things looked on set. And, again, we're tracking cameras, multiple cameras, and streaming them live. And, again, the real-time engines being used to render that background that the students designed over the weeks of the course itself. So it's kind of like bring everything together and having that deadline of you're going to do this live stream and it's going to be on this date. There was no like doing things later. There was no procrastinating because the show was going to happen no matter what. So that's all I wanted to share, in collaboration with this, because I personally am I'm fascinated, a bit addicted to virtual production in general, and I love seeing the work that folks are doing at like Texas A&M. It's incredibly inspiring, and I wouldn't want anyone to see that and just be kind of frozen in their tracks, that like, oh, but I don't have an LED wall, oh, I don't have a robotic arm. And I would really encourage folks to get this going on their side. And so anyway, there we go. That's it. That's all I have to add.
Thank you so much. That was a truly inspiring presentation, and looking forward to more VP productions everywhere. So now it's time for Q&A, and I really encourage the audience to post your questions in the Q&A channel. We do have a couple of questions already, so I would like to start with Cheryl. We have Ryan from the audience talking about, the concept of how sometimes learning a specific skill requires some deep learning. So do you have any discussions with your students about when speed running is appropriate versus when a slower, measured appropriate would be?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the speed running is really to get past that procrastination and hesitation. So it's not the final project that you're turning in, it's just the first iteration. So, we talk about that once we've done like that particular assignment. We do the first semester when they're learning Unreal, and we do it every week that we can. So last semester we did it 10 times out of the 15 weeks that we met. But they were also working on different level projects as well. So that, that way we do it in class as an exercise, but it's part of their bigger project. And so it's 10 points to speed run it. And then that way, if they don't do the process, which is basically, it's just in that case, it's like blocking out your environment with primitives, right? So that's 10 points of their 100-point assignment. If they don't do it, then they lose a letter grade. So it's kind of like learning to use it as one layer of the approach that you're doing, not the ending of it. That's the whole point. It's just to get you past that writer's block or creative block, or what I like to call creative paralysis, where you just freeze and you don't know what to do or start, right?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And there's another question in the chat window. You've answered it, but I'm just asking it for the general audience. So Mario is asking about, do you grade the speed running activities? In that case, how?
Yeah, and so that's how basically what I was talking about. Like, if it's an exercise, it's 25 points, and I use it as part of their participation attendance grade. So if they're absent for the class, they can still do it at home, because I'll post on the web course assignment that we have on the digital learning module system that we use. And I'll just tell them what the environment is, and they have a link to the Google Drive document that they can see what it is, and then they can turn in their reference images along with their screen captures. So in that case, it's more of like attendance, like I was there, and participation points. And then I'll also break it into the bigger project as part of the whole assignment. So.
Thank you. And now we are moving back to Kaia. So, we watched the video about the experimental filmmaking. If you can talk a bit about how you are, like starting off with this program, the students' background, and what's been the whole experience about it.
So yeah, it's been really interesting. Due to the fact that the school does have this really broad experimental background, walking into there and trying to find that way to translate that same, I guess, inventive approach to visualization. The idea of finding a new way to apply a narrative or finding a new way to apply a technique was there. So how can we seed in this language of visual effects and computer graphics in a way that if these students haven't necessarily been trained on CG, allows them the entry point for them to be able to engage the way that makes sense to them. So cinematography is a choreographic process. So being able to move through space and visualize it and think about different perspectives and mapping from point A to B, that's all part of the language they know. So how can we build on that? And that's where Goss-and-Splatting became this really interesting and obvious way to do this, because how would we describe this person from multiple angles and multiple pieces to tell a story, while now being able to take this into a very easy to use, tech that they can use on their phones. We now have created a 3D model. Now what can we do with this to expand this? But it wasn't about going through that whole process of learning how to code or learning how to do this. They could just start beginning to work with something spatial, which is really interesting. And so then, providing that distinction between, well, now there's stereophotogrammetry and Gaussian-Splatting, and they sound really advanced, but what is this really? Here we have a mesh geometry. Here we have light fields, essentially, and two different approaches how we go through and do this. It starts to catch, because again, we're still thinking about light, we're thinking about dimension, we're thinking about spatiality. It really caught on. And then the tools that they do have a lot of access to, or have traditionally had a lot of access to, are the Adobe product set. So that's where we started. But now that the language is there, and I've only been, this last semester was my first semester here at Iowa, so it's been a lot of trying to educate this, but now we're at a point where, hey, you were talking about Unreal Engine, can we start to pursue this? And so I'm finally getting into, now let's go into a virtual studio and start playing with these assets. And now how can we extend this? And we'll be doing whole new research based around this, where we are now with that language, being able to take this on and explore new ways of being able to devise visual storytelling techniques using these approaches within Unreal for interactive or VR, but also for virtual production. And having gotten sort of over that hump and not needed to go through there, but still be able to think like filmmakers, was super important. And and now, like I said, they're starting to riff and really think about how to do this, and we're doing some really exciting stuff.
What are some questions that came up during this experimentation? Like, were these students talking more about the film language or more about the technology? And what was the learning outcome, like patterns on their learning interests in this space?
Interestingly, one of the main prompt that I was using to guide this was this Walter Benjamin writing, which is art and mechanical reproduction. I'm butchering the title, but it's this really deep text that talks about the aura of artwork and how, from last century, taking a photograph of a sculpture, you still feel like you're seeing the sculpture, but are you actually? So where does that aura sort of live? And interestingly today, and that's one of the reasons why we began working with the Stanley Museum in Iowa, is we have these sculptural pieces that now we're able to see from all sides, that we're able to interpret and examine and allow someone to be able to kinesthetically engage, or at least sensorially engage with an electronic capture. So that became a really interesting point of that became one of our main inquiries. And so we shifted into the sort of art mode, which began exploring ideas of democratization of access to art and how you can break this down. Where does the aura live now? I mean, we can create these almost photoreal, if not completely photoreal, representations that you can engage and move through here using computer technology. So what does that do about the original artwork, and where does that live? And more importantly, what is the ephemerality of an object? That one of the things that happened, we took some of our final captures in an exhibit that literally the next day, we didn't know this, they removed the exhibit. I went back to get some additional touch-up and it was gone, but we had an example of it. So we have that studio, that space where it was displayed, we have that piece, which then meant it was no longer ephemeral. We were able to keep, keep that record in situ of that specific object, which was fascinating. And so exploring how that might end up extending into the real world for capturing cultural objects that have that ephemerality and be able to share those with people. An object breaks. I'm thinking back to the object to be destroyed that was destroyed. I think it was Man Ray. It was a little.
Just taking notes.
Yeah, Man Ray created this piece that was a metronome with an eyeball stuck to it. And during student riots, they came in and destroyed his piece. And it was called The Object to be Destroyed. So then he made another one. They said Object Not to be Destroyed, which was very funny. But imagine if you had been, if you had captured that, we now would have the object that wasn't supposed to be that was destroyed, but we have a version of it. So anyway, that would really drew a lot of the students in, is how these computer graphics, aside from film, also become this very documentative method to be able to have things extend beyond their origins.
Yeah, very interested to learn more about the upcoming projects. And again, audience, if you have more questions, please keep posting them. Oh, okay. I think that we have one question for Kaia. Is there any way to view the end project by the public? Yeah.
That's what we're working on this semester. One of the things that we're trying to do is, based off this idea, is in partnership with the Stanley, again, see if there's an opportunity to at least do one of their primary exhibit wings solely virtual that would be accessible by the public outside. That's we'll see where that goes. But the other thought we are very intrigued in is being able to do a literal, like, building a new virtual wing that could open up the opportunity for virtual exhibits to be able to come to the virtual Stanley, which that'll be my next presentation. We'll see how that goes.
We look forward to that.
So soon.
Cool. Okay, so now we are moving back to the virtual production ICVFX team. So I just have one question to start off. As instructors who are both collaborating front end with these companies, but at the same time, also instructing students into all these robotic arms and immersive virtual environments. So what are some of the instructional challenges that you faced through this process, and how to overcome them?
Oh, there were quite a few. We had a number of them. A lot of it was making sure that students understood all that was needed in order to shoot at the studio. So our students were really used to digital environments, and a lot of them had worked with Unreal before, but a lot of them had not worked with actual physical cameras, physical lights, physical props. And so until they visited the wall, they didn't fully understand, I think, the scope of, oh, we really need props to go in front of the wall. Oh, we really need to get costumes. Oh, yeah, we should hustle with these casting calls. So those are some of the challenges that we experienced. Caleb, do you have any?
Yeah, I wanted to also add, especially kind of like on a note that Nick was mentioning earlier, where like in terms of understanding if people can, who can do this and who can't do this, or people being intimidated by like a large entry point. Like Mayet, myself, were brand new to virtual production when that course started. Like we did a little reading and prep and practicing, but it was completely new to us. A lot of the stuff that was we were really leveraging a lot of different help and resources. Like a lot of it was about making the right connections and talking to people, and we were very surprised each year about professionals out there who are interested in participating in mentoring students and like coaching them through a project like this. So we had like professionals who were handling all of the robotic arm stuff and teaching students stuff. They're even, and like a lot of the mentors are even teaching students the like a lot of the filmmaking and cinematography concepts. So we definitely leveraged where we had strengths in terms of like filmmaking and digital animation and 3D worlds, but also a lot of it is us learning on the job with the students too. And it's nice because it means that these kinds of opportunities means that we can start teaching these things on our own in the future, and it opens up like the new areas that we can have some kind of expertise in, which is great to bring back to the classroom with the normal students.
Nick,
yeah, I'll just build on what Caleb was just sharing too. And I think it's really can't be overstated, the degree to which the instructor has to be willing to learn in these scenarios. This isn't going to be the kind of thing where, well, I built this syllabus and now for the next 5-10 years, that's the syllabus that I'm going to teach from. The course structure needs to be adaptable. Each group of students that comes in is going to have a different idea about what they can produce or what they would like, the direction they would like to go into. And that direction might necessitate, oh, wow, we haven't done that before. And as instructors, you know, we're of course staying connected to industry by attending SIGGRAPH conferences and such, but we're not full time doing this kind of work, and so it's really critical to stay connected to industry, make those connections at the conferences, and then I think, you know, invite those professionals, even if we're not able to go to a studio like Stray Vista, for example. But it's not unusual at all for me to have multiple industry guests join in the classes through Zoom sessions and talk about what they're doing, what their challenges are, and the kinds of things that they're interested in seeing students learn. And they're hearing that directly from industry. They're learning directly from that experience. And so every single one of the classes that I pointed to that we're teaching always has industry involvement, and I think that's a critical piece. And again, it's not the kind of scenario that if you have this vision of what it's like to teach a university course and be a professor in a course, and you know, going in and like, oh, this is, I am about to bestow upon you the knowledge, and I am the one that has the knowledge. That's not at all what it's like. It's like, it's trying to discern and also be able to turn that industry experience that's coming in into and put it into context for the students, and because they have vastly different career trajectories envisioned for themselves and all. And then the last piece is just to make sure that all the students do have touch areas that maybe that they weren't thinking about necessarily getting connected to. You know, like the film director, like not getting into Unreal. Like, okay, it's important. I think that I love that being pointed out by Mayet and Caleb, that, you know, they may never need to use Unreal Engine themselves, but if they've seen it, now they know it exists and they know what's possible. And the one example I'll share is that my graphics students come in and are shocked to learn that you know, you're going to have to use, this is an SDI cable. This is, you know, this is not HDMI. This is SDI video cable, and we have to do Genlock, and then all of this is networked, and you need to know the IP address of every device in this network. And one of the assignments that they have to do regularly, and it happens over multiple times, is they have to diagram the electronic diagram of all the interconnections of the equipment in the studio. They have to know what systems are on the 10 gigabit network and what are on the 1 gigabit network, and what the mocap system is connected to versus the render box versus the SDI versus NDI, all of these kinds of things. And they're like, why do I have to do this? But no kidding, I have at least one alumni has reached back. She's like, I can't believe it's been so useful. I had an interview and they asked me how did I figure out this one problem? And I said, well, I used ping, you know, they pinged an IP address, and that ended up landing them the job, and they're about to go and work their second Super Bowl in virtual production. And so I'm like, yes, okay, that's going to be a part of the class for now. Anyway.
Okay, so I think we've reached the end of the session. It's already 3:45 p.m.
Wow.
So I think we will wrap it up here, and I look forward to also implementing the speed running assignment in my own classes and in my own work. So thank you so much for this wonderful session. It was very insightful, and hopefully the audience, you learned a lot that you can implement in your own classrooms. So thank you, and that's the end of this session.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nandhini.
Thank you, Nick.
And thank you, everybody, for being in on the session. So good.